What is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? Or fan, whoever might be out there, whoever might stumble across this in the next little bit. Not sure what kind of a crowd we'll get today. A little bit of a late starting pop-up show. Apologies for that. It's just still not caught up with the work volume that's involved in covering football and baseball at the same time. Baseball slate starting up at 35 on DraftKings. I don't want to give the wrong time. 6:40 on DraftKings for 6 games, 7:05 on FanDuel for 5 games. Projections, all the confirmed lineups, everything you need for baseball are up. We are not doing a baseball show today. We're just here to talk about tonight's Thursday night football game. So buckle up for that. We'll go through the different players. We'll build some lineups, which I think is the fun, important part of the show. I've had some good builds throughout the first couple of shows of the season. A couple ones I'm happy with. I typically go back and grab at least one that we've built on the show and throw it in. And no, Friday of last week, we definitely had a couple cashers that we built during the show, FanDuel-wise anyway. I think we did on DraftKings as well because similarly themed. Monday, I forget what we did on Monday. I think I missed the cash on Monday. I only played one lineup. But as always, we're looking for that top spot. We're looking for those lower duped lineups. We're playing a lot of quarterbacks in flex roles. We're playing a lot of skill players in those captain and MVP multiplier spots. A lot to do here. This one should be a good one for Showdown, though. 49-point game. Washington 3.5-point dogs in Green Bay. Not a bad setup for some productivity. We've got a couple decent quarterbacks in play. Some interesting running backs, I'll say. Deep wide receiver room on the other side that's kind of bumpy right now on the Green Bay side. More straightforward, I think, on the Washington side as far as the pass catchers go. But a lot to go through. Andy's here. What's going on, Andy? Good to see you, buddy. Shout out what you guys like, what you want to talk about in the chat. You know, I'm just going to plow through some of the player-by-player stuff before we jump over and get into the lineup building. But if you got thoughts about who you like, who you don't like, you want to talk about, let me know. Definitely when we get to the lineup building, let me know what you want to see as far as who we're using in captain and what we can do. But yeah, good setup for those who are unfamiliar, and I doubt that's any of the handful of you who are here so far. But the website is rotoscouts.com. Access to everything is under $1 a day always. That right now is football and baseball for the same under $1 a day on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly plan. Get access to individual player projections, all the stack rankings in both sports, the individual player rankings positionally in football. I do a boatload of written content for football. You get a lot for your money during football season, football and baseball, and then basketball, hockey right around the corner. We'll have projections for both of those through the year. No time like the present to check out Roto Scouts. Follow the Roto Scouts Twitter handle too, and subscribe down here on YouTube and hype the video. Hyping is a new thing. Maybe wait to the end. If you like it, hype it. If you don't, I don't want you out there hyping things that you don't like. Wouldn't ask you to compromise your integrity that way. Hyping. God. Can't believe this. This is the age in which I live where I'm begging people to hype my things. Anyway, hope you guys are doing well out there. Nice Thursday afternoon here. Where do we want to start? J.D. Daniels? Always an interesting spot to start with. Both these defenses did fairly well in the week 1 games. They both generated a fair amount of pressure, which I think is interesting. 25.6% pressure rate for the Green Bay defense. Came away with 4 sacks and a pick. 22.2% on the other side. They came away with 2 sacks. Reasonably talented defenses to work with. I think both D definitely in play, but it is a 49-point total. So I think you do have, unless you really get like a defensive score, I think we've got lower expectations maybe for big-time performances for fantasy-wise from these defenses, unless you happen to get that pick 6. But a few sacks might be in play. You might get just enough to keep them on the board. Might get just enough to get to each of these quarterbacks a couple times. Jaden, in his debut, threw the ball 30 times, decent volume. The volume was pretty limited on the other side. You see, just 22 pass attempts for Jordan Love. I think it was a total of 23 dropbacks on the day. A little bit limited, threw for 188 yards, did throw 2 touchdown passes to the one that Daniels threw, so there's that. Again, he's got a deep and fairly talented receiver room, but it was a little bit limited as far as just the general pass volume. He was taking deep shots, though, 11.5 intended air yards per attempt. Daniels was throwing the ball downfield a decent amount, too, 9.3 intended per attempt. And we had a big ADOT on Terry McLaurin, 19.3 yard average depth of target. McLaurin was going out trying to get it while they were working a lot of the volume through Debo, which is something to watch. 4 targets versus 10 targets for Debo in his debut. So definitely something to watch just as far as where they're directing the ball there. Zach Ertz picked up 5 targets. The veteran tight end, rock solid, caught one in the end zone for a TD. Never going to be crazy as far as his upside goes, but always going to be solid for that kind of volume. Touchdown upside for sure, because they do call his number in the end zone. And he's reasonably reliable. He's not the tight end that's going to get out there and break the giant, 100-yard gains. The giant, 50-yard gain, make huge plays on the yards after catch, anything like that. But if we're just looking for TDs, a handful of targets down the field, Zach Ertz is ideal for that. 8.4 yard average depth of target last week, consumed 15.27% of the air yards. Still involved in getting down the field. Cubs is here. He heard an interesting stat today. What was that, Cubby? Cujo, good to see you, buddy. We've got a collision of running backs on the Washington side. Just talking down the Commander side of things here. Everybody wants to play Bill, and I get it. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt goes by Bill. Had a monster debut. Carried the ball 10 times. 8.2 yards per rush attempt is ridiculous. 82 yards. Scored 4.5 yards before contact. 3.7 yards per attempt after contact. Was only targeted once to the 3 targets that the other guy got, Austin Eckler. Eckler only carried the ball 6 times. Gained 4.3 yards per rush attempt. Did not score. Just 2.3 before, 2.0 after per attempt. But saw more snaps, which I think is important. Eckler's more involved in the passing game. He saw 47% of the snaps versus the 33% that JCM saw. I'm still calling him JCM, by the way. I'll get into the Bill thing. When he scored, I jumped into the Discord and yelled Bill. But I was calling him JCM in the run-up to the draft, and that's just kind of stuck in my head. So found out about the Bill thing late. But regardless of what you call him, I do think there's a little bit of an interesting situation going on there as far as where the ball might go, depending on what's going on in the game. And then you did have Jerry McNichols on the field 19% of the snaps. He's also involved in the passing game. He drew no targets, but he was out there for some passing downs. He also carried the ball 4 times, gained 6.3 yards per attempt. Does Bill's emergence make some of that go away? Probably in the long run. Does it happen immediately? Not necessarily. So you might still see some snaps go in different directions here. And Bill maybe gets clipped a little bit. He's 7,000 on DK, 10.5 in the captain, 86 on FanDuel, 12.9. I feel like FanDuel got maybe a little carried away with that price. And by comparison, DraftKings really did not. So a little bit manageable on the DK side. FanDuel got a little bit expensive. I think Eckler is as reasonable a play. There is still talent there. There is still volume there. They're going to be giving him the ball. At least in the early part of the season, I would still expect Austin Eckler to be around 50% snap share, handful of targets. It's not the top option, but they project fairly similarly in my model. And if we're given a little bit of credit for more ownership going toward Bill, the more popular buzzy play, then fire up some Eckler. Nice, Cubs. It's a Norm joke. Solid. 9/11 Airlines ranked last in customer satisfaction for the 24th straight year. My buddy Dan sent in a thing. His significant other knows a person, is a girl in his office, I think he said. The coworker born on 9/11/2003 who claims she did not know 9/11 was the day of the Trade Center attacks. My response, my thinking was like, I guess if you were born on 9/11 after 2001, you probably were never given one of those kitschy, like, headlines on your birthday throughout history type gifts. But I mean, come on. How have you lived from 2003 to 2025 and you didn't know that it was what 9/11 was? I just, in this country, I don't buy it. Maybe elsewhere in the world, sure. In this country, I just don't buy it. Be amusing, though, especially if that's your birthday. Anyway, not to get into the 9/11, obviously a solemn day here in the country. A lot going on out in the world that we won't talk about. Cubs has kids these days. Yeah, seriously. Their heads all in their social medias and their tweeters and their Twitters and whatnot. Their Insta books and their Faceygrams. I know how it is. I don't think I start Bill in season long this week. We have a couple flex spots. We've also got I've got the ATN play that I can put back in. Last week I started Eckler out of all three of them, got the worst performance out of all three of them. Obviously would have liked to have had Travis in there, and I took him with a higher pick. It just came out where I was like, a little safety with Eckler. Didn't go that way, but I don't think I go Bill. I've got ATN in the running back spot. I could slide Bill in for one of my lower end wide receivers in a flex role. I don't think I'm going that way yet. I want to see it again. I think the talent is real. I think the kid is good. But there is going to be a little bit of job share there, so it's something to watch. Talked about Ertz already. I think those are extremely fair prices for Zach Ertz. In a low-scoring game, I think he plays up more in the captain role in what this game is more likely to be at the 49-point total if it goes to plan. I probably like Ertz a little bit better in a flex role. Give the multiplier spots to some of the more likely big contributors. A couple of mixers in here with Noah Brown, Jalen Lane. I already mentioned McNichols just handling some minor backup duties with 19% snap share. Brown did play 47% of the snaps last week. He was dealing with a bit of an injury, and it's a short turnaround. So just something to be aware, too. This is a, obviously Thursday after Sunday game, so short turnaround. It was a knee for Noah Brown. Didn't practice Wednesday, but seems fine, supposed to be involved. He had a solid 11.3 yard average depth of target, another guy who can get down the field and go get it. Was targeted 3 times, came away with a pair of them for 27 yards. Not a bad performance, 12.36% of the air yard share. Reasonable, to throw into a few lineups, but not much more than a mixer. He's not going to be a priority behind the running back volume. Jaden Daniels doing his own thing. Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel needing all their targets. Zach Ertz needing some targets. There's only so much to go around, so many mouths to feed. Jalen Lane was targeted twice. 4th man in on the receiver depth chart. I would say even more of a mix and match type play than Noah Brown. He had a 10-yard ADOT. 7.2% of the air yards. He came away with one of his 2 targets. Played 30% of the snaps. So, I mean, he is out there. He is on the field, but it's a low projection, low-end option as far as price goes. Given the 30% snap share, though, the fact that he was out there running some routes, he ran a dozen routes across 19 offensive snaps. So when he's out there, he's running a decent number of routes. So as dart throws go, again, I do prefer Noah Brown, but he's 3 times the price. So if we want to come down the board only slightly as far as what the opportunity might look like, similarly deep targeting, I do think Lane plays up that way a little bit. Bates and Sinnott just not going to get really enough action. Bates, 53% of the snaps. Don't believe he was targeted. Yeah, not targeted at all in the offense. Sinnott barely on the field. Just not relevant down there. And then Luke McCaffrey did not get involved in week 1 either. He played 7% of the snaps. It's a handful. He played 5 snaps with the offense. He played 7 snaps on special teams. And right now I don't have Chris Rodriguez projected. I believe he was a healthy scratch for their game over the weekend. And I haven't seen anything to indicate that he's going to be out there, but we'll keep an eye on it in inactives, actives running up to the game. But he would be yet another, deep depth, afterthought type guy in this kind of territory. On the other side, Josh Jacobs punched one in for his 8th straight game with a touchdown. Not a bad performance out of him. 88% snap share. Carried the ball 19 times. saw a 20th opportunity to touch it in a target, and he caught it. So touched the ball 20 times last week. That's all we can really ask. That's like the magic number to me for football, is if I have 20 potential touches, I'm interested. Goes for running backs mostly, right? Where obviously if you have a 20 potential touch wide receiver, it's a no-brainer type play. But for running backs, that's what I'm typically looking for to distinguish you between like a average play and a very interesting high volume type play. And you see that around the Jacobses of the world with you see that around guys like Saquon, obviously, with more significant targeting and similar kinds of rush attempts. So you always want to drill into those guys, and Jacobs has been one of those guys for quite a while now. Had a ton of volume through last year and was quite good. This year, 66 yards in that opener, 3.5 per rush attempt is not great, but when you're getting fed the rock that much, it evens out, and it's all right. He scored a touchdown. The passing game volume is not overly relevant for him, but every now and then he'll pick up a target. Jordan Love, again, it was just a volume concern. If this game really shoots out at 49 points, then I think we get more volume out of Jordan Love than 22 pass attempts. Completed a high percentage of them, again, through 2 touchdown passes. 8.5 yards per pass attempt exceeds what Jaden Daniels put up. He had 7.8 yards per pass attempt. Kind of breezed past Daniels before. I'll swing back around. And he was throwing the ball deeper, taking some shots to some of these receivers. I think we get a little messy around what the receiving group looks like for Green Bay, especially if the volume stays low. Just makes Josh Jacobs look even more appealing. But we definitely want to get invested in this passing game a little bit because odds are they're going to be throwing the ball at least a little bit more aggressively. Daniels, by the way, on top of the touchdown that he threw, the 200 and change yards, the 30 pass attempts, also ran the ball 11 times, 6.2 yards per rush attempt for 68 yards. Didn't score, but 5.7 yards before contact, just a half a yard after contact. We're not expecting that much unless he really breaks one. But definitely involved in the rushing attack, good scrambler, good designed runs, and can score on the ground. So just another attribute to throw in his direction. Between the two QBs, largely because of that, I would say I lean toward Jaden Daniels if you have to have one. But Jordan Love, very good at the position and fairly priced, 10, 5, 15 in the captain, 11, 8, 17 in the captain. Not bad, especially by comparison across the board there. There's a few $100 more on Jaden Daniels on both sides. FanDuel actually $1,200 more. That's a stark difference on FanDuel. Just $400 different on DraftKings. Jaden Reed got out there and got it done. I got to say, there was a lot of skepticism. He's playing through a Jones fracture, and nobody's ever been able to do that at his position before. But apparently got out there last week, played 18 snaps, ran 14 routes over those 18 snaps. In those 14 routes, he was targeted 5 times. And he came away with 3 of those for 45 yards and a touchdown. 14-yard average depth of target, 27 and change percent of the air yards. Romeo Doubs was getting out there a little further. Monster 23-yard average depth of target last week. 5 targets, 36% of the air yards. Didn't come away with a touchdown, only caught 2 of those 4 balls. You get a little bit more erratic passing reliability once you're talking about just taking deep shots down the field. And that is the concern a little bit on the other side. I mentioned it in passing. Terry McLaurin, just getting deep looks on his 4 opportunities, where Debo was getting all the short work. He had an 8-yard average depth of target and just used his skill set to after the catch to make things happen. So that is a distinct difference in the not only target volume, but the nature of the targets, the probability that he's coming away with a good throw, a catch, and an actual production there. So it does cast this into question a little bit as well between McLaurin and Debo on the other side. Kind of in the same way that Bill and Austin Eckler are a little bit of a back and forth. There's a little back and forth going on here, but McLaurin, if anything, let's hope that knocks him down a peg in the public estimation at the higher price, and people tend to go toward Debo more. And then we just take advantage with an excellent Terry McLaurin play up at the top at hopefully a little bit lower ownership than he ought to be. But that is a back and forth that exists right now. Very short sample all the time in football, especially early season. I talked about that a lot last year. It's why, some of the statistical analysis, we do get into just, some surface numbers in football, especially week 2. You kind of just got to take these things as what they were and then factor in what we know about the players, what we expect from the situations. Doubs is cheap. I'll give him that. 4,000, 6,000, 42, 63 as compared to where Jaden Reed is. Those are ridiculous price differences. I don't really see that as being that stark a difference in those two receivers in terms of their talent. The fact that Reed is playing hurt, the fact that they project essentially the same. There's a massive, almost unjustifiable price difference there. Romeo played 33 snaps with the offense. He ran 19 routes on those snaps. He was targeted those 4 times, caught 2 of them for 68 yards. And again, tremendous depth of target. It's a 71. If you're just boiling it down to snap share, why does a guy who played 71% of the snaps cost 4,000 when the guy who played 38% of the snaps cost 82? Just because this guy scored? Fully healthy man-to-man, I do think Jaden Reed's a little bit better, but it's close enough. Matthew Golden, also very affordable, but also more highly priced than Romeo Doubs. 48% of the snaps last week to the 71% that Romeo played, was targeted twice on a 5-yard average depth of target. Why exactly is he more expensive again? He was dealing with an ankle injury early in the week. Was limited on Monday, full participant on Tuesday and Wednesday. He played 22 total snaps, ran 13 routes over those snaps, was targeted just the twice on the 13 routes. Starts to get really thin there when you're paying more for that guy than the guy who's out there more, getting targeted more a part of the offense, a guy who was on the team previously. Tucker Kraft picked up 4 targets. He also scored a touchdown. 12.8 yard average depth of target. He came away with 2 catches on his 4 targets. Did play 92% of the snaps. He also ran a fair number of routes. 17 routes run on 43 snaps. Was targeted 4 times over the routes. He does have Luke Musgrave there. Musgrave played 17 snaps, ran 4 routes. So when it comes to who they're looking to get the ball to, pretty clear. Kraft is not poorly priced at 54 or 5,000 on FanDuel. Projects out reasonably well. McManus and Gay, by the way, both firmly on the board, especially in a high-scoring contest. Kickers definitely play up a little bit. No issues there. Dontavian Wicks, another banged-up receiver for this team. Part of the room for sure, though. Wicks in week 1, he's dealing with a calf injury. He caught 2 of 2 targets, ran 11 routes on 21 snaps in week 1. .5 yard average depth of target, 10.6% of the air yards. So he's involved, but it does dwindle as we go down the board. And again, this team was limited in the overall number of attempts last week with only 22 on 23 dropbacks. So we just got to remember we've got a very high volume bell cow running back to deal with, and we've got a broad receiver room to move some targets around. If it's a limited share of targets, that impacts everybody's upside. So just something to deal with a little bit as we're considering Packers. But again, I do expect in a game script like this and what this is likely to look like, we're going to be throwing the ball a little bit more. Downboard, Manuel Wilson played just 4% of the snaps, barely out there, but a more involved runner if something happens up the board, or if they just need, depending on how the game flow is going, if they need somebody to handle a couple of carries. I think he stays a little bit more involved, where Chris Brooks, and that's why I think he's a little more highly priced, where Chris Brooks is really a passing downs back. Played 19% of the snaps, got out there for a few blocks. I think he ran a couple of routes. Ran 2 routes over 9 snaps. Was targeted once, caught it for 2 yards. So I think the pricing is correct here, and the opportunity is pretty limited for both of those guys, unless something happens up the depth chart there. But that would be the difference in why they're priced that way. And then Savion Williams, Malik Heath, pretty limited down board. Heath played 11 snaps, was not targeted on his 4 routes. And my mouse died again. It's starting to get annoying. I think it started that day that I got caught in the rain down at the Stone Pony. I had my laptop and this mouse and a couple other things in my bag. The USB stick that I had died from that. I think it just got too much rain in it, and maybe this mouse did the same. Kind of annoying. Who the hell else was I looking for here? Savion, there we go. Savion handled the kick return duties. He played 3 snaps with the offense. He caught 1 of 1 target and ran 1 route over those 3 snaps. So again, extremely limited volume down there. Maybe a weird dart throw pairing with some Green Bay defense. That's about it, though, for the up and down as far as the players go, gang. Yeah, Romeo's too cheap, man. I agree, OMG. Would you fade Love in the flex if you have Jacobs captain? It would really depend on what I'm doing with that lineup. I hate that answer, but that is the case. There isn't necessarily a direct need to have him correlation there, but just in terms of the money to spend, some of the more likely point scorers that we've got, you typically do just want the quarterbacks in if you can afford to get them in, because they're the most likely point scorers in this one game format. And that's why you put them in the flex rolls. They just pad scoring, and a lot of the times you do need that padding to get up toward the top of the board overall. But yeah, too many clicks that night, Cubs. But yeah, it's an interesting question. XXXXXXXXX.XXXXXXXXX. That would be one of the more viable ones in which to fade Love. Let's put it that way. We can take a look at it right now. I think it's time to jump over to some lineup building. Speaking of, let me real quick before we do that though. Rockies and Padres lineups are in. Let me get those up on the website real quick for baseball. Talk amongst yourselves momentarily. You guys remember Coffee Talk with Linda Richmond, the old Saturday Night Live Mike Myers bit? I'm sure I've referenced it before in this situation. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. Jordan Love. Fade? Keep? More volume? Are we in love with Jordan Love? That's my Linda Richmond. Rockies and Padres. Let's see if anything's weird in these lineups. Nope. I think they're exactly what they were projected to be. Love it when that happens. Light baseball slates tonight. I don't know if you guys looked, or at least on FanDuel. Prize pools were not exactly generous. FanDuel also pulled the trick that I predicted with the money back thing from last week. Juice that prize pool 3x or the buy-in 3x for this week's Millie. $15 up from 5. Not a surprise. They'll keep that at a milli for this week, maybe next week. And then they'll keep the entry fee the same at 15, and they'll cut the prize pool in half. It'll be $500,000 by week 4. Typical FanDuel routine. Looks like just the Angels left to confirm for that baseball slate. Again, 6:40 start time if you're playing baseball on DraftKings tonight. 6 games over there. 5 games on FanDuel starting up at 7-something. Yep, Angels lineup just came in. Perfect. Let me do that too. Bear with me, gang. Everything's actually functional today, so it won't take too long. It was weird the other day, if you were here for when I was doing this during the football show. Something funky happened in the baseball file that just moved lookup references around, and I had to fix it live, and it just took way too much of our time. If it annoyed me as the person doing it on the show, I'm sure it was annoying to watch me do it. Get your nominations in for Captain MVP in our lineup building efforts here. Click the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you never have. Hype the video. That's new. Check out rotoscouts.com. Everything's under $1 a day. Access to baseball, which I'm putting up on the updating up on the website for you right now. All the confirmed lineups, and football projections of which are up on the site for tonight. I also have the main slate projections updated this afternoon up on the site. The initial cut of the player projection, the player positional rankings are up on the site. And I will update those like twice a day, typically, between now and main slate lock on Sunday. In between now and then, there will be a main slate show. We'll do similar kind of player breakdowns for the main slate. Talk about all those different ins and outs. It'll be, I think, at this point tomorrow sometime. I'm trying not to have to be Saturday. And then you'll have a game-by-game groups optimizer builds notes article where I break down each game with notes about each player opportunity. I give you the combinations that you want in your optimizer builds, your lineup builds, your groups, your sims. That's also where the stack rankings live. Then I do on Sunday mornings, I do the above below column, which is one of my favorites of the week. That's not what I wanted. acemind.io, by the way. That's where our sim and optimization partners are. But the above below, I get into a little bit and I poke around the industry, see what's buzzy, see who other people like. And I try and pick out a few players where we're either a couple points above, a couple points below in our projections. Last week, if you followed that and you stayed away from the below guys, you missed a couple key plays, I got to say. Danny Dimes kind of hurt me there. Didn't like that. Got a couple of the other ones very correct, though. I was happy about that. But again, just a fun piece to write through the week, and I think a helpful one, too. Can help you get away from some bad chalk. Can help you get on some good under-owned plays. So check that out. All that stuff included for your same under $1 a day. Let's get into this. Let's see what happens if we put Josh Jacobs in a captain role and fade Jordan Love. OMG saying top 1% of lineups historically perform better without the QB, but it does get you different and still hits at a decent rate. Top 1% of lineups historically perform better without the QB in what sense? When they have a running back in the flex, in the multiplier spot, or overall? Because that doesn't jive with what I've seen in the past overall. Maybe it's changed up a little bit in the last 2 years, but I would be skeptical. I should amend. Top 1% might be stretching it. If we're talking about win, top like 3-4 lineup builds for that night, then I could buy into that a little bit more, maybe. Just for the differentiation involved in spiking the very, very top of the board. Maybe you could get that through depending on sample size. But I think overall we still mostly want the quarterbacks in those flex roles. But anyway, let's do the exercise here. We'll get Jaden into one. And then I'm kind of inclined to take a look at what McLaurin looks like here. And my hope, again, would be that at a cheaper price, maybe people do ride that Debo targeting a little bit. We get McLaurin, the deep target, the big threat, a little bit lower owned. And it could be a nice little makeup day to McLaurin. Hey, we got Debo involved in his first week. We're coming back to you this week. Scary Terry, my namesake. I think I'm significantly older than he is. So if anything, he's my namesake. I don't think it works that way. Or I'm his. I don't think it works that way. I'm going to get Romeo into this, even though he's probably going to be crazy popular. I don't love anything down this way outside of like, you can throw darts at these two. I think are interesting. Manny Wilson, a lot less so. Musgrave is a stretch. Lynn is a stretch. McNichols. There's a lot of stretch options here where it's not exactly a ton of depth after that Wicks spot. There's a clear line right there at Dontavian Wicks. Everybody below that, more pure backup, more limited opportunities. Lane, again, I think, given that he got a little bit into the mix last week, would be a dart there at a slightly cheaper price, but these guys are much more likely. With that in mind, $47.50 a piece. Let me take a little bit of that. I do have Doubs in there, though, so I don't necessarily want to go to a second wide receiver from the pack. If I do this, can I have the kicker? I can. Yeah, something better than the kicker, maybe. 64. Golden would have been interesting there. But again, that would be going double dipping on a Packers passing game that I don't have the quarterback from. I don't love doing that. You go like, I don't want to go with the defense, though. Not in this version of the build. If I did, it would be probably Packers defense there at 48. And then you're hoping for like the grindy side of this to limit that. I don't love doing it with 3 receivers in, though, so I'd probably clip one of them. And then at 46, you can get like Matt Gay into that. And that's way too duped. Holy shit. All right, so we can't go that route. Let me get how much. I wonder how much of that was Romeo. All right, what if we do this then? Way less popular Austin Eckler. He's got to be more limited. I still want McLaurin in that. Get a little connection there in the passing game because Eckler's going to get a little targeting, a little bit of scoring upside. We're all the way down at 33.50 already, though. Oof. Can still get Brown there. And again, we're kind of padding up through here in the flex rolls, which Wicks doesn't fit anymore. Now we're down to these guys. All right, so I guess I can't have McLaurin. I'll take Zach Ertz instead. And then in that case, I don't want that in there. That's a little better. You go with that setup on both kickers. It's not great, but that's a little bit more reasonable with such a popular captain play, cutting it down this much. And I think that's a at least somewhat realistic lineup where we're using a large chunk of our salary. And both kickers should be productive. And again, probably better options than either of the defenses in that same price range in a game like this. It's not a terrible setup. I would probably be inclined to play this one more like wait, what? How did that get more expensive with Ertz in the captain spot? That's not changing. Oh, weird. Why is it looking him up? Sorry, guys. Maybe that's what whoever it was noticing the other day. Is that that might have been wrong. This one's correct. And I think I checked it over there, maybe. At least we caught it now. All right. And these are 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, those are right. All right, so I don't know if that just happened or if that was screwy already. But this is now correct. Or it's 87. Yeah, all right. So I would want the Jacobs play there. Now we're back. And now you get 33 more coming your way, and you're already cut way further down as far as dupes go. 6,400 apiece. So then you could go to a Golden, obviously a Romeo at that broken price. Fits back into this. That would probably break our ownership a little bit here. Gives me 89 to spend. So you get something silly like Romeo Debo and 14 dupes. That is a good lineup. I say something silly because of how popular those two guys will be in this equation and how it juiced us back up to those 15 and probably more realistically over 20 dupes with that build. But if you go a different direction with it, Eckler, Jacobs. Honestly, what can I do here? I know the original goal was a Jacobs without Love, but we saw that. 29, probably too far down. Yeah, you'd have to stretch with like a McNichols or like a Lane, maybe a Musgrave, but you'd really need to drill that. Like he's got to throw that touchdown to Musgrave, kind of a thing. If you're going that route, that would obviously be extremely low owned, but you're really thin down in that Musgrave territory. So we probably don't put Love into that. An interesting way to take it would be to put Bill into it and double up on that running back situation while also trying to grab a little pairing with Jaden Daniels there. And then you're fairly heavy Commanders, but that's all right. It's not a crazy Vegas line. And then a 59. Let's get to... I guess Matt Gay. Oh, no, wait, I can't have McManus at 59. That isn't bad. It's probably like 10, 12 dupes in reality. Leaves a little money on the table. If you don't go with the double running back there, which I totally get, and we don't necessarily want to go Romeo for the popularity, again, this is a spectacularly good option at those cheap prices. It's just going to drive up our ownership. We'll do other things with it. Get like an overly expensive Jaden Reed in there, maybe, and then 47. You go back to Matt Gay this way. That's kind of interesting because you probably fend off a little bit of popularity by going with Reed over Romeo while still maintaining, significant upside, and that really cuts down those dupes. You're spending all your money there. That's a reasonably correlated stack that makes some sense game script wise. I don't think that's too nuts. Quality Soul says, wearing the Yankees hat. Let's go. Yanks have been kind of ugly the last couple days against those Detroit Tigers. Yeesh. I called it a measuring contest the other day, and they've not measured up well. Kevin H says, you tried Golden at captain on DK at his price. I'll assume he's going to be low owned. Yeah, let's give it a shot. 96 in the captaincy. I would imagine, like you said, going to keep them a little bit lower on there. Let's get both QBs into this build. I'm going to continue to ride with that Terry McLaurin option again. In the whole, I don't think he's going to be low owned. That red obviously indicates that he's not going to be crazy low owned. But my hope would be maybe a little slight bit different than Debo. Maybe I gain a little bit of flex there, a little bit of leverage there. 52 down this way. I'm getting to like Tucker Kraft coming in that direction for that price, and then McManus. At 5, it's probably going to keep us in the teens. Yeah, 12.5. That's probably around 15, 18 in reality. It's not a bad starting point though. You leave a little money on the table, we're in business. Yeah, you go like Noah Brown here or something like that. It's actually about the same. Brown and McManus are going to be on the same? Interesting. What about Dontavian? Yeah, similar. Double kicker option there. That's an interesting way to go. That double kicker really pairs things down pretty nicely in this setup. I don't hate that. Top receiver, QB, and then, like third banana receiver, but they'll get him the ball every now and then. You're definitely going to be at a lower owned captain there. That's for sure. And again, I'll always take those captains. I do tend to like a guy who's a little bit more likely to be a larger contributor. Again, he played 22 snaps in week 1. He was targeted just twice, but he did run 13 routes over those 22 snaps. So the frequency of, the correlation with routes run to snaps is not terrible. Better than half. But you want a little bit more than that. But again, they were just limited in how much they threw the ball in week 1. So that has an impact on those numbers. Do we have anything on? Nothing overly deep to get into with him. I think this is a not bad way to build this one. If you want to take McLaurin out of it, we can claw back some salary at 64 apiece. Again, let's just see what it looks like with Romeo. Is there a path to building a low-owned Romeo? Probably not. 84, you get Reed into that too. For who's in this lineup, that isn't crazy. 11 and change. Again, it's riding a lot of that on Golden being in the captain role. And then some mid-board type ownership guys through those spots. But considering the probability, the upside of that lineup, it's not terrible. Ooh, you're 60, you're 100 shy doing it this way. I was going to say, I guarantee more people would be doing it this way. Eckler and man, even leaving a lot of money on the table. It's got to be Romeo that's pushing that up. If I put Kraft in that spot, is it going to be that much? Yeah, I guess it is. I'm surprised that we're quite so many with Golden up there. These are correct, by the way. L3. Just wanted to make sure. I mean, these guys are obviously pulling a ton of ownership weight themselves. And again, I don't want to get into the defenses really. McManus. And everything keeps landing right in this 12 to 14, 16 range on these Golden lineups. I mean, if I take Jaden out, that's a relatively straightforward way to do it. In my opinion, somewhat artificially. I don't know that I would necessarily want to go Jacobs right into that spot at the next highest price. Obviously, you can go with the McLaurin Debo route, but now I have McLaurin Debo without the quarterback, which I don't love. It's turned into a weirdly challenging little build. I will point out the one that I just threw together here, leaving 24 on the table, did cut our ownership dupes in half at 6. Somewhat by accident. Again, I don't love having both these guys without Jaden. My hope there would be maybe passing touchdowns do go to Terry McLaurin, and then Debo gets his on a run. Guy who can handle the rock a little bit on the ground. That would be stretching it a little bit, in my opinion. Actually, get McManus out of it. Let's see what we can do with that 74. That's not crazy uninteresting. You do still have both the big receivers in there. But if they're just getting volume up and down the field and then Bill's the one who punches the ball in, that could get interesting. And that's, again, we're duped a handful of times, probably more than 10. But we're cutting it down as significantly as we've seen in this configuration of this lineup. I became a little bit more of a challenge than I expected it to up there with Golden in that captain spot. Let's see what a quarterback captain looks like before we move over and take some FanDuel shots. I'm more interested in going to the Jaden one. And as I've been doing, I'll give him McLaurin to work with and also Brown down there. And then we'll put Jacobs into this one because I think that makes some sense. And then at 5,000, let's go back to that double kicker thing and just see what that does. It's not a bad starting point. Leaves 1,100 on the table. We're down at 10. And probably realistically 15, somewhere in that territory. With money to spend, we can obviously take a big chunk of our popularity out of that. What does it look like with Jordan Love? And obviously Romeo's sitting right there. That's an easy mark. And you could throw JCM into that mix, Bill. That's 36 times. That's the most straightforward way to build that one, I think. But if you do that and you're at 43, is there something we can do down the board to change that up a little bit? I've already got Noah Brown in there. Give him Tavian Wicks to throw to. That's give Jordan Love somebody to throw the ball to. That did cut it in half, but still not great there, obviously. Nope. Too much money there. 49. Just go like Matt Gay into it. I'm gonna back up at 15. Too thin. Again, you can get down to like this kind of territory, but that's real dart throwing. Once you're down there, I don't love those options. Just real limited as far as what their actual opportunities, their snaps are going to look like. Can't even do the double tight end move there. Yeah, I don't love that. Kraft's a little bit more expensive than I'd like. Feels like even just $200 cheaper, that would be easier. Again, Romeo's just so obvious, and this is where Romeo's just going to get crazy, stupid popular. Because if you even just go to Kraft there at that 54, look what it does to who you can get to. I'm at 38 now, so I can have at least a couple shots. I can get like Wicks in there. What is it with... Yeah, that's 33 times. But if you go to Kraft over Romeo in that decision, that leaves you at 23, and then you're shot. That's really, I think, what's going to push him to very, very high popularity levels. So what's the best version of this? It probably was back to that Jacobs build then, and we're leaving Jordan Love out of the mix a little bit, which I'm honestly fine with. If we're just chasing what fits, what works, I think that's all right. It's not an unreasonable game script. You could have succeeded with that last week, given how infrequently they were throwing the ball. If they get out to a lead, they might just sit on it. Yeah, the question does still become, though, you're at 35, so you're still going to get common builds through like these couple options. It's challenging if you front load a lot of salary through those guys. The obvious answer would be not McLaurin. You go away from him. Even if you go to Debo with a little bit more popularity, you're saving a few $100. You're $37.50. You got a little bit more room there to operate. You're still, again, playing within these guys, but there might be a combination. Is there Brown is obvious. 32. This is probably going to be overbuilt, though, too. 43. No, you can't. So you can't get to either kicker or either defense going that route. Interesting. So front-loading any kind of salary, even if it's Debo there, having just the QB captain and then Jacobs into that lineup or the other quarterback really pushes us down the board into this Manny Wilson, Luke Musgrave, Jalen Lane, Jeremy McNichols, backups type territory. Something to keep in mind when you're clicking things together. There's good in that people will be less inclined to build those kind of lineups, and knowing that has a little bit of power for you in, if you're building only a couple of lineups, you can take one and consider it a, sacrifice to the idea of the big day, where you're taking maybe a less probable, but a more profitable, if it connects type path, just pure leverage path up toward the top of the board. It really does inform decision. I think it also informs how Romeo is going to get very, very popular over there. What's up, Javier? You're saying never had a chance to listen to a Showdown show from you before. Any high-level recommendations? We're kind of talking it through now, but I'm big on the skill players in those captain, the multiplier roles. A lot of the time I'm looking at the either team's second wide receiver, the slightly less popular, slightly less expensive of the wideouts. Today, for me, I've been using McLaurin more. And for me, I think that situation might work a little bit the other way around this week, given what the targeting for those two look like. I've been talking about it throughout, but they'll probably come down equally popular. Normally, if Romeo was at a regular price, that's exactly the guy I'd be like, let's get some Romeo in this spot. I think he's going to get juiced up like crazy because of how cheap he is. So maybe it is more Jaden Reed, but that type of a player. And the Packers have several of the guys that can kind of fill that role. I don't even mind too much. It's a little bit lighter. Given the high scoring game total in this one, the 49-point total, I do think it takes a little bit of upside away from the Kraft or Ertz at captain play in the multiplier. You'd probably need the multiple touchdown day out of them, which either guy perfectly capable of doing. But it does lead me toward more the big play, the big time wide receiver types, or just, the super high volume running back, obviously up there, but he's going to be definitely very popular in that. I think if you're taking your pick between either JCM or Austin Eckler, you're getting less popularity with reasonable upside there, but shaving it down by that job share. Those guys will be splitting that job. So I'm not necessarily looking for that type. If we're just talking about like the archetype of what we want in that multiplier spot, not necessarily a guy in a job share, unless it's just for the pure lower ownership leverage type reason of, all right, I would have had Josh Jacobs there. I went to the other side because these guys, the job scare is going to push people away. And I don't see it. I think Bill's going to get the carries, right? If that's your take. I think just an easy way to look at Showdown that we've talked about a lot over the years is just, have a story with the lineup. If you're hand building, obviously you're not sitting there coming up with 150 different stories across an optimizer simmed out build for thousands and thousands of lineups. If you're building one, if you're building a handful throughout the day, the week, whatever it is, tell a story about what that game's going to look like and have it, somewhat jibe with the game script and what Vegas thinks of this game and what the teams, how they align. But all right, if then, do it as a series of if then statements. All right, if I take Eckler in my captain role, what does that mean for the rest of the team? For me, it almost certainly means that I'm not trying to rely on a Bill touchdown, Ja'Cory Krosky-Moret, but it does still mean that I can play Jaden Daniels in there. You get rushing upside out of Jaden Daniels. Eckler catches the ball, so they share a little bit of correlated upside. You get a little bit of passing touchdown correlated upside as well. What does it mean if we've got a receiver in that spot? Does it mean that it's a shootout? Does that game script follow? Does that mean I don't necessarily want Josh Jacobs in a game that I'm expecting to go over the 49-point total and really shoot out, where I've padded it with receivers and quarterbacks? My stories are too far-fetched, says Javier. I've always got a really good story for what might happen. It's nailing down the what will happen, what did happen. That's the trick of it, right? But yeah, so I think you get it. I think you get what I'm saying. The have a story part. Tend to struggle with that, but it's great advice. Yeah, I think it's just a logical way to think about it. And if you just do it rather than like tell me the full story of the game, just think about how football works, right? Boil it down even further. distill it down to football. And how does football work regardless of this game total in the script? Just if X takes up a certain amount of the opportunity, there's only so much left over for the other guys. If this is doing this on the clock, there's only so much time, clock scoreboard. And how does that impact what the other team's going to be able to do? Does it put the kickers on the board more to have a high score, or does it put the defenses on the board because there's a low score? You can get easy pickoffs through those kind of things if you're just, again, thinking about the game environment and what it looks like. So I think that's just, down at its most basic, I think that's something to do. And then obviously we're layering in the DFS of it, where we're very worried about all these different ownership numbers and the dupes, especially for Showdown, or almost exclusively in Showdown. Individual ownership is absolutely critical, where I tend to come down on the individual ownership, largely overrated in a lot of spots for full lineup and full slate contests. Let's do one more DraftKings build. What have we not done? Did we do a Romeo captain? I think I threw him up there at one point, but I don't know if we actually built one. I forget. Let's just see what it looks like. Let's get Bill into this one. We'll go crazy popular with this one. Obviously, I got a ton of money to spend. Why is that not coming up now? Oh, because I erased it. Cool. I must have taken that out when I deleted the guys from that column. I was like, there's no way I have 13 left here. 8 left is a bounty at this point. So this one, we would definitely want to leave money on the table. I would like the double tight end. Ooh, 35. Yowza. And still 4,800 left overall. All right. This is going to be another stupidly high owned one. Yes. I'm really curious. I want to see what that number is. Where is the... It's honestly not crazy, the Romeo number. Per these projections, I think they're off by half again. We've got him at mid-single digits. I think he goes double digits. Most of the weight on the obvious 3 up at the top. And then kind of surprised they've Kraft in the 4th highest owned captain spot. That kind of surprises me. They are pulling more toward Debo than McLaurin, though, like I suspected. Jump over to the other side real quick. I just want to see what that looks like across town. 6:39, by the way. Get your baseball lineups in. Even lighter on the FanDuel slate with the half PPR. Interesting. That's not exactly what I expected. So really, we are pushing a lot of it up by doubling up the quarterbacks. Unfortunately, again, I just kind of see the need with that split going on. I should just like GCM. Maybe we just go for the pack wipeout. Otherwise, we're just leaving tons and tons of money on the board, which is fine. But yeah, not exactly. McLaurin, and then 74. And we're still ending up with like 17 and change. Again, we've got two of the highest owned players in here because I'm just trying to spend some of that salary. So we did that, and then like this. You're back to a McLaurin Debo without Jaden build now, and we're still 12 duped. That's going to be stupid. Yeah, 50 plus. That's probably, that one I would say is probably going to be duped 100 times rather than 50. Spends exactly all your salary. Yeah, path to success here is almost certainly going to be leaving a lot of money there. Which you can do. Again, you've got like, two realistic options right there. Leave a ton of cash on the table. You're already cutting this dupe down pretty significantly. And then, throw a dart at somebody. Hurts. We're at least down at 11. We're leaving 10,000 plus on the table in that build. That might actually be something that's impacting Romeo's ownership in that captain spot just on its own, is the fact that you don't necessarily need to go that route and shave captain's salary down that much, which could be an argument for using him more in that role. Not necessarily figuring out how to spend all your money, but if people don't necessarily go to it because he's too cheap, then maybe that gives us a little pushback the other way, which is interesting. I'm trying not to confuse the issue even more there. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying. I'm really curious to see where that ends up. Somebody's going to have to let me know where Romeo comes in ownership-wise on DraftKings tonight. Let's do a couple FanDuel ones. I know that's what people care about less. It's RG's ownership projections in there, feeding that Deegs. They are mediocre. That's why I always say, like, it's 12, but it's probably more like 20. Just because they tend to underestimate at the very top, and that has the biggest impact, where they'll say like 35%, and it's typically going to be like 50% in a flex roll, that kind of a thing. But it's RG's that feed the back end there. Adele scratched again? Son of a bitch. That vertigo's really giving him issues. Thanks for that, bud. Let me just drop it into the Discord here if you didn't already. Hang on one sec. Let me grab the... He's still in that version. Let me fix that baseball lineup real quick. Talk amongst yourselves again. I'll give you a topic. How is the quality of RG's ownership projections? In my opinion, as you just heard, mediocre. But better than mine because I don't know how to do them. Something I've never been able to crack. Got a couple different versions of attempts, but nothing that ever really comes out good. And it is just anathema to me to give you guys a product that I don't believe in. That's why we don't do ownership right now. One day we'll get it nice and figured out. That's Chris Taylor. Major downgrade from Joe Adele to Chris Taylor in the heart of that Angels lineup. And then it's Darno Davidson, Tedosio. Oh, Renifo wasn't in the original. All right. Okay. jump in here in just a sec, and we'll build a couple quick FanDuel lineups just as soon as I get Joe Adele updated on the website. Come on. Website is rotoscouts.com for the unfamiliar, by the way. Give us a look. Everything is under $1 a day. Access to baseball and football are included in that right now. Basketball and hockey right around the corner. Ton of content for your money. Come on. Too many posts, too many clicks. Just wish it could be one upload, not two. If I could solve that, it like double my productivity. Farm Angels lineup. All right. Updated. We're back. Let's do a couple FanDuel ones. Javier's playing with ownership stuff. Learned about ownership score. Very interesting stuff. Depends on what are you referring to as ownership score? I imagine that's a like ranked number for either ownership sum or ownership product from a lineup. Ownership product is how you eventually arrive at the dupes. It's essentially 1 divided by the full lineup ownership product, and that informs the unique in X number, and then that's just a matter of dividing that into the total number of entries. Lone Wolf, what's going on, bud? Oh. One of these days, I got that soundboard, so I just have a howl for when Lone Wolf joins the room. Shefty just said Green Bay is down 2 starting offensive linemen. Potential impact there to Jacobs. Potential impact on the pass rush, sure. I don't tend to worry too much about the guys in the trenches. Most of the time, those guys are just out there doing their jobs, and it all kind of averages down. But, yeah, always noteworthy. It's just something I don't really try and quantify all that much, if that makes sense. Let's do a couple of these. Let's go a different route. We'll go with a Debo MVP. We haven't done that yet. Obviously, we'll take Jaden along for the ride in that one. Let's get Jacobs that way. And now we're at 62 apiece. Totally different paradigm now that we're spending FanDuel money. Let's take Austin Eckler in there. And maybe some Tucker Kraft. And 59, because it's FanDuel, you can do basically anything you want. These are in slightly out of order. What do I have there? Debo. I said you can do whatever you want, but maybe that was lying a little bit. Let's say, let's do this. 54. I didn't realize these were all out of order. Kind of screwed me up there for a sec. You can't get double kicker, which is interesting with that configuration. Obviously, you can if if I didn't have Eckler in there, I'd get double kicker pretty easily. That gives me 53, and then you just put Ertz in that. That's not all that crazy. And again, probably more like 8 to 10 if we're being realistic about what those ownership numbers are like. I didn't change them on the back end. But that's obviously incredibly low as far as dupes go. And a pretty reasonable lineup. You're just putting all of Green Bay through Jacobs, Debo and Jaden, double kicker, and Ertz. That isn't bad at all. What we'd be looking to fade with this one, honestly, is the Jaden Daniels rushing touchdown. That could burn us here, where you would end up wanting it flipped. If you're getting a touchdown throw there, touchdown throw, maybe 2 there, and then he runs one in, that's probably going to flip those 2, which would kill you. And obviously, you can't build this lineup the other way around. But that would probably box you out. Well, that's not a bad starter. I don't dislike that. See what happens when we do go with the Jaden MVP. That's going to be crazy, stupid popular. We'll go with Love in this one. I got to get some of the cheaper receivers, of course. Where is Romeo on this board? There he is. 4,200. Am I missing something? Like, it's not just me, right? I'm not crazy. I'm not completely missing the boat with like Romeo's leg fell off during the middle of the week or something, right? It's just so cheap. His running mate here is 9,800. And he's hurt. I again do like this setup where you're going Eckler there because you get a little correlated passing with Daniels. And then obviously, you would want one of the bigger receivers there. You can probably afford it. What happens if we go McLaurin there? Can we afford it? Yeah, 4,400. I've already got Romeo. I get 2 Romeo Dobbs into that lineup. 44. You get Noah Brown there. That correlates all right with Daniels. You're looking for the big Daniels day then, but that makes sense with him in the captain role. For Jaden Daniels captain, that also includes the other quarterback and a receiver that should be quite popular at his cheap price. That's not a bad setup. Call it 8 to 10 duplications, and you got a little cash to spend there. So if you wanted to pull that and go with like Kraft instead of Romeo. See, again, Kraft being slightly more popular in those projections, I don't really buy. Right? He was slightly more, right? Yeah. I don't really buy that. I think Romeo is going to be popular and more popular than Tucker Kraft. But either way, I think you're making a good decision in that spot. If you wanted to pull Eckler and put Bill in that spot, 46. You could go to Romeo pretty easily. You're in that same territory dupes wise. Again, you're going to be most of the time on anything overly realistic. You're going to be at least a couple people along for the ride with you. And that's all right. We're just looking to get this knocked down as far as we can. Lone will say, and don't sleep on Noah Brown as a value play. Yeah, I don't dislike it at all. Gets down the field, has been an involved receiver. I don't dislike that at all. I don't know that I'm going to him in my captain spot, and you certainly don't need to like price-wise, but I would definitely use him frequently in the flex. I think he's going to be an underappreciated option. What else do we want to build? A little Bill captain on FanDuel. You guys want to go that route? Again, I don't love it with the split and the uncertainty of how that snap share is really going to break down. And Eckler's the guy who's more involved in the passing game, at least right now. Bill got out there for, I think, 3 pass plays, 3 dropbacks. Was targeted once, I think. We talked about it already. It fell out of my brain. We go Bill. Love. Let's give Love a little something to work with here. And then 10-2. Debo exactly. And then leave money on the table. I got Jaden Reed already. Again, you could go that double running back route. I don't love that, but that cuts your ownership way down. You're leaving 25 on the table there, so you can take Tucker Kraft out, 75. You get like McManus. You can get to the Packers defense, which we haven't really talked about much. Not that we're looking necessarily to load up with Commanders and then throw the Packers defense into the mix. Obviously, get the Commanders defense in this spot. Let's go with Noah Brown here, though. We'll put Brown in for where Eckler is. And now I'm at 12-1. Can I get Jaden? I still can't get Jaden there. Damn. I can't go that route. Again, the path for that would just be, not using Jaden Reed. cheapening that up, and then you can get Jaden Daniels in there. 83, right back in the same territory again. And just in the interest of not using Romeo, where did this go? I think my answer is I don't really want either of the Washington running backs in that captain spot, honestly. Jacobs up there. We got to cheapen this up again. That'll be interesting. Oh, fuck. Just use the mouse. That's not crazy. Again, you're probably duped 10 plus times with that one in reality. But that's not a wild build. Monster use in the captain spot. Double QB. Double, like at worst, third wide receivers. And then secondary 1A, I would say, but the more talented 1A in the running game on Washington. It's not a terrible way to go. I would consider that lineup. Again, I would consider it, but expect that if it wins, I'm winning $8,000, not $100,000, right? Kid Lightning likes Jalen Lane over Noah Brown. All right. Just for the hell of it? Yeah, exactly. Right, Devin? I'm cool with $8,000. That's a win. You're not going to say no to it. And if you get a bigger split, that's why we're talking about get it down as far as you can, especially when we're talking to the hand building community, right? When we're talking to people who are building 1, 5, even 20 lineups, depending on your contest, if you're playing the big lottery games, you want to cut it down as much as possible. But if you're building one lineup, your approach is probably not that GTO, I've got every stupid broken possibility covered approach that you would come up with in 150 via Sims. Right? So there's a different approach. There's, again, that is if you're playing 150 every single time, there's a different path to be on with it where that GTO approach does make sense. That is the right way to play. But not when you're building one lineup at a time. It's just a different game. So, yeah, I think we're happy if we can chop that 8-10 ways. We're happier if we're getting 100, of course. I can tell you, I chopped a milli like, 7 ways, 8 ways? And I was pretty damn happy that night. That was in a showdown. OMG's not. OMG says, I'm not cool with 8. He wants the whole thing. Yeah, look, again, our goal is to get the whole thing. It's what we're always shooting for. It's what we're always talking about. But when we're sitting here hand building lineups, we're looking to winnow that dupes number down as much as we can. But anyway, going back to the Jalen Lane thing, I'm curious about the shout out there. Is that just for I want to get different? I want to play somebody less likely down the board? Because if we're looking, again, Lane, 19 snaps with the offense, caught 1 of 2 targets, ran just 12 routes, 0.92 yards per route run. Noah Brown played 30 snaps, ran 22 routes, caught 2 of 3, 9 yards per target, 1.23 yards per route run. And just the more clear owner of the third spot on the depth chart. Watch me freeze the whole show now here at the end. the fourth rounder, 128th overall at Virginia Tech, 5'10", 196. Do I not have his... He's fast. I'll give him that. 4.3 40 time. Dude can fly. Yeah, again, if you're just looking for darts, the fact that he did get on the field for a few snaps, he did run a few routes in their first game, drew a target. Or 2 targets, rather. There's playability there. No lack of it. Don't know if you're playing whoever threw that into the chat. Don't know if you're playing on DK or FanDuel, but yeah, he'd be on the board. Okay. You're saying for price there. Yeah, that's a good consideration. I was drawing that artificial line in my head up top there, a little bit higher. And yeah, that would be a reasonable consideration. And even more so over here, when we were fishing around, like I was saying, we were landing in this Wilson, Musgrave, Lane, McNichols, Chris Brooks kind of range a number of times. And yeah, would be out there at that price for a couple of darts. Just a lack of reliability, less probability, but the possibility guy is definitely in play for Showdown, as we've talked about a lot. Let's get him into one. It was a Daniels with Debo, Scary Terry. I think that was a FanDuel build when we were doing it. Let's see where it goes here. Mm-mm-mm. 61, you can get interesting there. Again, without using Romeo. All tight end. 25. Yikes. Still do 18, probably 25 times, though, if you go that route. It's obviously, you're going straight line through the most popular players here outside of Jalen Lane. I just wanted to see if there was a path toward getting up toward spending all our money on star guys, and if this caught us enough of a discount where it makes that reasonable, and probably not. And if I were going with this build, I'd probably want Jordan Love up there. In which case, what does this do? Can't get Jacobs there. Times reach. And that would be the obvious choice. 13, that's a little bit more reasonable, but still not where we really want to live. So again, you'd probably be looking to do this with a skill player up there. Just say we were doing this so that we have most of our money spent, and then you go like that route. 12, meh. Again, I'm just trying to see if there's a path to spending most of our money on the top end while using Jalen Lane here before we get to how deep can we cut that ownership number. If we just do like something like that, right? You're down at 6, you're leaving 4,300 on the table pretty deliberately there. But it's doable. You go like this if you're determined to spend more money. Yeah, I don't even. That's probably. Oof. Yikes. Went the wrong way with that one. Yeah, so your clear path here would be skill player in that captain role, like we were just doing there, and then even cheaper. 69, you go like something like that. Leaving 3 on the table, cut it down like 6. Double kicker gets you even further. Yeah, again, on the board as a dart throw can definitely make things work salary-wise. So you were saying Jacobs, Dobbs, Reed, McLaurin, and Jalen Lane was what you called out there? No, that one doesn't work. -4 on that one. But you could get it with Debo. It's a reasonable approach, but we had some that were, again, this is our mathematical dupe with what information we have fed in here. We had a couple that were under 1 that were reasonable builds. This is not an unreasonable build, but you're at 2 and change, which means you're probably more like 8 and change. But not a bad path to be on as far as what you can do with that wild card play there. Yeah, maybe we don't use that. And we do use Terry there. And then we're at 94. And you can get like build into this and leave a little bit more money on the table. Or you're in the same territory at 2. Obviously, if you get Eckler, you're probably same 2. We're living in that 2 range. That gets us under 2, leaves an awful lot of money on the table, stretches us kind of thin on that Commanders passing depth chart. It's not completely unlikely, but it's less likely, I would say. This would be like the extent of where I would want to stretch that idea to if I'm padding those receivers out. What I probably wouldn't do would have all 3 of them in there. So maybe you take McLaurin out of that one and play it a different way where you're getting the I've already got Jacobs in there, though. And maybe we're playing up the passing game instead with that one. That's a massive chunk of money to leave on the table. There's a path. Again, you're a handful of dupes with that one. But that's not a crazy path. Love to read. Jacobs picks up the other ones. Jaden does a little scoring on his own, throws one to Brown, maybe throws a deep ball, and you get a couple of points out of Jalen Lane without necessarily needing to get in the end zone. That kind of thing can win you a contest. So not totally nuts. What is Mike Brown calling me about? Mikey, I don't know if you can hear me right now, but I'm on a show. Geez, 7:09. We've been going for an hour and a half on this. I did not realize that. Flew by. I think this is a reasonably good time, though, to maybe punch out. We've built a solid handful of lineups here. Devin saying I'm a single entry hand builder that always throws my lineup in the big tourney just because I hate myself if I built the monster that could have won it all, but I didn't enter. Yeah, I totally feel you on that. I always would do things that way as well when I was just doing one at a time. These days, I've told you guys a bunch of times, I haven't been playing 150 for a long time now. I just play a handful of lineups. I've been better that way historically. It's just my game. So yeah, I'm doing that a lot where I'm throwing a handful of lineups into the big lotto contests and then playing some other stuff. But yeah, I'm with you, Devin. Anytime I'm building like one entry, for sure it's going into the lottery. I would not want to have it and not have it. So yeah, I'm with you. But let me say thank you very much, guys. I'm going to be writing overnight tonight. I'm going to try and get ahead of the game on the Groups and Optimizers article a little bit this week so that I'm not doing it frantically tomorrow night in through all day Saturday. Give you guys a little bit more time to read that behemoth as well. And then we'll do a main slate football show, hopefully sometime tomorrow. That's my plan. Might end up trickling into Saturday. It's going to be, I'm sure, a big baseball slate to deal with tomorrow and all of that fun stuff. But stay tuned for any of the notifications. There will be a football show this week. I know I said that last week, but this week, for real, there will be a main slate football show. It's amazing how the time gets away. With that in mind, guys, good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Let's take down a nice chunk of these big prize pools on this showdown slate to start our football weekends off right. And we'll be back over the next few days with a ton of contact. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. Share those results when you do at RotoScouts on Twitter. Free Discord link below in the description. Rotoscouts.com is the website. Everything's under $1 a day. Give it a look. See you, gang.